Draco Malfoy and the Journal of Dreadful Things. Written by Little Beans 19. Read for you by Gemini Wishes. Chapter 3. The Midnight Madness. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, October 1991. The remainder of September passed by quickly as Draco fell into the routine of breakfast, watching Potter, classes, lunch, more watching Potter, maybe even strike up a conversation, fail, consult a useless soothsaying journal, sulk a bit, afternoon classes, library and homework, chess with Theodore or something else, then fall into bed, trying not to be bitter by that point. But when October came, a new opportunity arrived. "Hey, Potter!" Draco called out on the first Thursday of the month. "First flying lesson together later, eh?" The Gryffindor boy simply stared. He looked like he was about to say something. Hope sprung up in Draco's chest. But then Weasley was there, whisking him away at a Gryffindor table with a rude scowl in Draco's direction. The primitive Weasley specimen was simply rude by nature. Draco had reasoned that it was the only logical conclusion for its behavior. "Draco, why are you trying so hard to get Harry Potter's attention?" Pansy Parkinson asked from across the table, her face scrunched in confusion. "None of your business, Parkinson," he told her simply, busying himself with buttering his toast. "He wants to be his friend," Gregory told Pansy truthfully, "but he's going all about it really badly." Draco spluttered. "I am doing just splendidly, thank you very much." He dropped his toast, deciding he wasn't hungry, actually, thank you very much, and unceremoniously left the Great Hall in a huff, ducking into an alcove to angrily seek out the journal. "There's not a lot to say about our first year. Blah, blah. Don't offer handshake on the train. Blah, blah. Try not to insult anybody. You'll only suffer later. Potter gets onto the Quidditch team. Don't try to get him in trouble. Blah, blah. Don't do anything stupid. There's a plot going on and Quirrell is the one behind it. Yada, yada. Ugh." Draco snapped it shut with another great huff. Why did the bit about first year have to be so little? And why couldn't his future self have given him more advice on how to go about befriending Potter? He didn't know what he was doing wrong. Hours later, after classes had been completed and the smell of dinner being cooked wafted through the castle, the Slytherin first years made their way out to the Quidditch field. Draco managed to feel excited about the prospect of finally getting to fly again. It was something he truly loved. The rush of wind, the chill whipping at his face, the feeling of complete and total freedom as he would soar through the skies and the fields behind the manor. He sighed wistfully, wishing that he could be on the Quidditch team. The Gryffindors arrived, shortly followed by Madame Hooch, who barked orders at them to find a broom. It was going well, until Longbottom managed to spoil the class once again. Honestly, the boy was a walking disaster. He pushed off before Hooch had even blown the whistle, going too high and stupidly falling off his broom. "None of you is to move while I take this boy to the hospital wing. You leave those brooms where they are, or you'll be out of Hogwarts before you can say Quidditch," Madame Hooch warned, before disappearing inside the castle with the injured boy. Draco felt something thunk gently against his foot. He looked down to see a marble-like ball. He picked it up, examining the colors that reflected on its glassy surface, a white smoke coiling around inside. "A remembrall," he observed. An often useless little trinket to help remind you of what you'd forgotten. He turned to see Potter watching him, or rather, watching the remembrall. "Hand it over, Malfoy. It belongs to Neville," he said coolly. Everyone suddenly went deathly silent for some reason, as if they were expecting something. Draco looked about curiously, before giving an unceremonious shrug. "As you wish." He began walking forwards, holding the remembrall out to a pleasantly surprised-looking Potter. Good. Now Potter would like Draco, and they could be friends, just as his future self would want. Just as he wanted. Potter would thank him, and then they could build from there. Draco's future would be safe, and he would be happy, and then he slipped. Everything happened so quickly. One moment he was frantically flailing, trying to get his footing. The next his back was colliding with the muddy ground, knocking the air clean from his chest, the remembrall soaring alarmingly high into the sky. And then Potter was on his broom, streaking after it with all the prowess of a professional Quidditch player, snatching it to safety without a moment to lose. Draco couldn't help but gawk. Draco! Vincent and Gregory exclaimed, kneeling beside him. The other Slytherins rushed over to him while the Gryffindors burst out into loud cheers, crowding around Potter. "Are you all right?" Parkinson fretted. "That looked really embarrassing," Zabini remarked. "Why didn't you just keep it?" Theodore asked, pulling a face. "Harry Potter?" Everyone looked up to find Deputy Headmistress Professor McGonagall actually running onto the training grounds, a fierce expression on her face. "Oh, Merlin, he is so getting expelled," Parkinson snickered. Vincent and Gregory helped Draco to his feet, and the Slytherins quickly rushed over to watch the drama unfold. "How dare you! Might have broken your neck!" McGonagall was stuttering angrily between heavy heaves of air. "Follow me, Potter. Now," she finally settled for, and so McGonagall left the grounds with a miserable-looking Harry Potter in tow. Draco took a moment to watch them go, then another to grieve for his sodden and muddy robes, and oh, his hair! The back was completely damp and no doubt a horrible murky shade of brown. This was so unfair. He hoped Potter got a whole year's worth of detentions. Actually, what was going to happen to him? "Nice one, Draco," Gregory said in a stage whisper. Vincent snickered. "You!" Weasley rounded on Draco. "I bet you did that on purpose." Draco pressed a hand to his chest indignantly. "I did that on purpose," he echoed in disbelief. Vincent and Gregory snickered again. Draco wished they would just shut up, because this only seemed to anger the Weasley even more, to the point where it drew its wand. "No!" Hermione Granger cried as the rest of the students gasped and backed away. "What in the blazes is going on here?" came the angry bellow of Draco's hero in shining Quidditch leather, Madame Hooch. She marched over to them, yellow eyes narrowed to slits. "Put that wand away at once," she snapped at Weasley. "Somebody tell me what happened." "They were fighting because Malfoy got Harry into trouble, miss," the Granger girl spoke up when nobody else did. There was a groan from Weasley. Granger gave him a sharp look before marching on. "Professor McGonagall's taken Harry out of the lesson because he flew to catch Neville's Remembrall." "It really was an accident, Madame Hooch," Draco began. "Yeah, right," Weasley exclaimed, face flushed with anger. "You were trying to get him—" "Enough," Hooch barked. "If Professor McGonagall is handling it, then it's sorted as far as I'm concerned. Now, we'll carry on with the last 20 minutes of this blasted lesson, and I don't want to hear any more about this. I don't want to see any wands being waved, and I certainly don't want any more interruptions." The students all mumbled their agreement, and the lesson got back on track after that. Draco had fun swooping about, despite the glares the Gryffindors, Weasley in particular, kept shooting his way as they practiced flying in circles. And when the bells chimed for dinner and the other students headed to the hall for a nice warm meal, Draco headed to the dungeons for a nice hot bath. He was cold, muddy, and exhausted. He wondered if his future self had gone through this too. It wasn't mentioned in the journal. As he soaked in warm, sudsy water, making a regal foam beard for himself, he wondered what would happen to Potter. Would he be punished? Would this be how he got on the Quidditch team, like the journal had said? "Why am I here again?" Draco asked moodily, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. He blinked dazedly. Vincent and Gregory were currently taking him on a long journey through the twisting dungeons. "We want to show you," Vincent answered excitedly. "The elves get you anything you ask for. It's great." "They do that at home anyway," Draco scoffed, fighting yet another yawn. "Yeah, but it just feels different at school," Gregory said. "Besides, we want you to come. You didn't have any dinner." Draco gave a hum of agreement. That was actually rather thoughtful of them. The stone walls around them were now less moss-covered and damp, and the air was crisper, which meant they were nearing the staircase leading up to the entrance hall. Ahead there was the stacks of barrels the Hufflepuffs usually disappeared behind, and the oddly placed portrait of a fruit bowl. "Shh!" Draco suddenly hissed, hurrying the two boys into an alcove. "Did you hear something?" "No," Gregory frowned, craning his head to listen. "Only quiet. Except, is it raining up here?" "Be quiet, you oaf!" Draco swatted at his arm. "Listen! Someone's coming!" Someone definitely was approaching, speaking in hushed tones. Could it be teachers? Ghosts? No, they wouldn't whisper. It had to be other students out of bed. "So unbelievably selfish and greedy of you," one voice was saying, a girl's, familiar and annoying. "We're celebrating. Ever heard of it? Don't have to come," came another, a boy's, familiar and even more annoying. "Really don't like this," said another boy, meek and barely a whisper. Where did Fred and George tell you they were again? Well, that was just Harry Potter. Draco stuck his head around the corner. Sure enough, there, walking down the winding stairs, was Potter, accompanied by an entourage of Weasley, Granger, and Longbottom. Draco's sudden movement did not go unnoticed. "Malfoy?" Weasley hissed incredulously, stopping everyone in their tracks. "Fine evening for a stroll, isn't it?" Draco asked, stepping into the corridor. Weasley scowled at him. "What are you doing, lurking about the dungeons?" Potter frowned. Draco snorted. "You do know you just defined a Slytherin, don't you, Potter?" He approached the Gryffindors. "I think the real question is, what are you lions doing in snake territory?" "They're being reckless idiots," Hermione Granger snapped. "That's what." Both Potter and Weasley rolled their eyes. "It's against the rules to roam around the school freely at night," the bushy-haired girl huffed, crossing her arms. "We could get caught and lose house points." "Oh, we're just heading for the kitchens, that's all," Gregory piped up, scratching at his head. "Nothing mischievous or the like." "I don't believe that for a second," Weasley told him, eyes narrowed. "Well, what are you doing here anyway?" Draco bit back. "Haven't you already gotten into enough trouble for today, Potter?" Potter exchanged a strange look with Weasley at that, their faces strained as if they were trying not to laugh. Draco, affronted by their secretive exchange, was about to ask them what it was that they found so funny, but then there came a quiet yet blood-curdling. Everybody looked up to see a cat sat some way down the corridor, her scraggly tail swishing, her red eyes glinting in the darkness. "Oh no," Potter gulped. "It's Mrs. Norris." The mangy cat's tail twitched once more before she sprung up and scampered away down into the dungeons. Draco squeaked. He turned back to the Gryffindors. "She's gone to alert Filch. He must be doing his rounds in the dungeons." This immediately startled the Gryffindors into action, all of them scampering back up the stairs from whence they came. Draco placed one foot on the stairs to follow them, then frowned and turned back to the dungeons. He repeated the process thrice before cursing. "What do we do?" he whined to the other two Slytherins. "We're going to be caught, and it's all your fault." "Well, we can just go," Vincent began, gesturing to the painted bowl of fruit. "Go where?" Draco snapped at him. "I can't be caught doing things like this. What will my father—" Someone abruptly grabbed Draco's wrist. He looked up in surprise. "Potter?" he spluttered. "What?" "If you don't want to be caught, then come with us," he said firmly, green eyes resolute. "Oi!" came a sudden yell. "What are you lot doing out of bed?" Filch. Draco didn't have time to process anything as Potter pulled him by the arm and the two of them dashed up the stairs. They reached the top, where the rest of Potter's motley crew stood anxiously waiting. Weasley's jaw dropped when he saw Draco behind Potter. "Filch saw us," Potter whispered frantically. "I think he got Crabbe and Goyle." "Oh no," said Draco, staring forlornly at the stairs descending to the dungeons. Now Filch would know it was at least 2 more first years he was after. "But what do we do then?" Granger asked, hopping from foot to foot. "We can't go back to our house with a student from another house. That's against the rules, too." Potter looked caught out at that, as if that thought hadn't occurred to him. "We could just go back anyway and leave Malfoy here," Weasley suggested eagerly, already shuffling towards the main staircase. Draco huffed, placing his hands on his hips. He was about to bite back with an intelligent and scathing remark at Weasley when the sound of footsteps echoed through the halls. "Sniff around, my sweet. They can't have gone far." "Filch!" Granger hissed. Longbottom started sniveling. Potter placed a finger firmly over his mouth, waving an arm as he rushed to the stairs. Draco scrambled to follow him up the steps, not needing to be told twice. Somehow, through the panicked haze, he had a sudden thought. "The trophy room," he whispered to Potter's back. "It's never locked." "Where is it?" Potter asked over his shoulder. Draco pushed in front, waving a hand for them to follow. "I don't trust you, Malfoy," Weasley hissed, still following along anyway. Draco rolled his eyes. The feeling was mutual. They reached the dark trophy room slightly out of breath. Draco looked around at the vast displays of plaques, medals, and cups glittering in the moonlight. "Okay, now what?" Granger asked. "Now," Potter frowned, "now we try and find an easy way back." They crept through the trophy room and down a gallery hallway lined with suits of armor, the only sounds being their breaths and the padding of their feet. Hogwarts was spooky at night, Draco realized as they passed a portrait who said nothing, but its eyes followed them. They probably would have been just fine if Longbottom hadn't suddenly tripped over his own feet, crashing into a suit of armor and taking Weasley down with him. The noise they made was incredibly loud. The whole castle seemed to echo with the clatter of metal on the unforgivable marble floor. "Run!" Potter yelled, and Draco did. They all did, sprinting and sprinting, not taking care to know where they were headed, pushing through dusty tapestries and darting down cobwebbed corridors until they had to stop, gasping for air. "I think we're okay," Potter panted. Draco wheezed in response, clutching at the stitch in his side. I told you, Granger was huffing. "I told you!" "We've got to get back to Gryffindor Tower," Weasley gulped, "as quickly as possible." "Let's go," Potter agreed, nodding. The five of them began edging toward the corridor when a doorknob in front of them shook and something came whizzing out from the room behind it. Peeves the poltergeist burbled with delight when he saw them. "Shut up, Peeves! Please, you'll get us thrown out!" Potter grimaced. Peeves only cackled. "Wandering around at midnight, ickle firsties? Tut tut tut, naughty naughty, you'll get caughty," he said in a sing-song voice, eyes gleaming. "Not if you keep quiet, Peeves," Draco said, stepping toward the poltergeist. "If you don't speak a word of this, I shan't tell the bloody Baron you were up to no good." The ghost looked stumped for a moment, before his grin came back full throttle. "Clever, clever clogs, smart little blondie. But how would his bloodiness react if he knew that you only knew that because you were out and about when you should have been off to Betty Bye's?" Peeves sung, cackling to himself. "Should tell Filch I should. It's for your own good, you know." "Ugh, just get out of the way!" Weasley snapped, obviously losing what little patience he possessed and swiping angrily at Peeves. The poltergeist only cackled nastily. "Students out of bed!" he screamed. "Students out of bed down the charms corridor!" And they were running again, diving beneath Peeves and rushing toward the end of the corridor, colliding with a door. Potter tried to open it, but it was clearly locked. Draco didn't even think as he pulled out his wand and shoved Potter aside. "Allo, Mahora!" he cried, pushing the now unlocked door open and sprinting inside, the others tumbling in after him and slamming the door shut. "Good thinking," Granger said. "A second longer, and that's what I would have done." "Shh, shh!" Potter and Weasley both hushed her, pressing their ears to the door as they listened to Peeves and Filch speak. Draco let out a puff of air, turning around and pressing his back against the door. He looked up and his knees suddenly felt quite weak. A tiny noise escaped his throat. They were in the third-floor corridor, and now Draco knew exactly why Dumbledore had warned them. "He thinks this door is locked," Potter hissed. "I think we'll be okay. Get off, Neville. What is it?" "That!" said Draco, his voice unnaturally high to his own ears. The others swiveled around. 3 heads, 3 pairs of glaring eyes, 3 pairs of snarling, drooling jaws lined with sharp, yellowed fangs. It was slowly getting to its feet, ears falling back as it got over its initial surprise and began to growl. A low, thunderous rumbling sound that went right through Draco. He felt his knees buckle. Why, by Merlin's frilly pantaloons, was Dumbledore hiding a gigantic 3-headed dog in the school? One moment, Draco was staring up at the 3 snarling faces of his sure demise. The next, he was falling backwards onto the floor and Potter was slamming the door shut. Draco didn't stick around. He blindly dashed all the way back to the dungeons, his mind a constant loop of, What? "Oh, hey, Draco," someone said when Draco practically fell, stumbling hurriedly into the common room. Draco looked up. Gregory and Vincent were sat in the comfy sofas near the fireplace, each holding a steaming mug. "What?" he frowned, still panting slightly. He tried to gather his thoughts. I thought you two got caught." "No, the kitchens were just behind that portrait of the fruit bowl," Vincent said with a shrug. "You tickle the pear to get in," Gregory supplied, dunking a biscuit into his mug. "Filch never comes in," Vincent chuckled. "We think the elves freak him out. We brought back a mug of hot chocolate and some biscuits for you." "Oh," Draco said, sitting down awkwardly next to them, taking the mug offered to him. He took a sip, chocolatey goodness and warmth flooding through him instantly. He looked up to find Vincent and Gregory watching him. He said intelligently. "Thank you." Draco tried his best to listen to their conversation as they nibbled on their biscuits and drank their hot chocolate, but his mind couldn't help but wind back to the beast Dumbledore was keeping in the school. The journal definitely didn't mention anything about a near-death experience with a frankly ginormous three-headed dog. Ironically, he couldn't help but wonder if this was a good sign. The very next day, Potter and Weasley approached Draco just as he was finishing up in the library. "Have you told anybody?" Potter asked nervously. He didn't need to clarify, but Draco simply gave him a dubious look. "Told anybody what?" he asked airily, tracing the spine of his copy of 100 Magical Herbs and Fungi. Potter frowned. He glanced around warily before leaning in. "About what happened last night? With the thing, you know," he urged. "You better not have gone blabbing, Malfoy," the Weasley glowered. Draco quirked an eyebrow, clicking his bag shut. "Why, Potter, Weasley, I'm afraid I really don't know what you're talking about. I was never anywhere last night." He shrugged in a what-can-you-do sort of manner, strolling out of the library with a smirk, leaving behind 2 Gryffindors with equally stunned expressions.